In 1972, in June, this army service was finished, and then Prabhupada came to Europe, generally in the summer. So in July he was scheduled to come to Paris. So all the devotees from Germany, from Hamburg, we drove down to Paris to meet him, and that was the first time for many of us to see him actually. And that was a special experience. I've described it in my book, Srila Prabhupada and his disciples in Germany. So he was arriving by airplane, and we were all in the airport. In those days you could do that with a big kirtan waiting for him. We had formed 2 aisles so he could walk through into a VIP lounge where there was scheduled, some reporters were coming and asking an arrival address, something like that. So we were all waiting for him to come. So then finally when the doors opened for the arrival area, and we saw Prabhupada for the first time, and I describe it, not just me but everybody, many devotees, others also have had the same experience, that just by seeing him it was a very an impression, because he's not an ordinary person, he's a pure devotee. So what I perceived, and others also did, that he was actually effulgent, golden, and from the skin also, you could say, he looked very regal, very aristocratic and effulgent and smiling when he came around. So later on, because it's 1972, I found this quote in Chaitanya Charitamrita which confirms this actually. Because you may say, well, we're also excited and young, we had some hallucination, seeing some effulgence, whereas actually there's just nothing. No, actually it's a fact. So I will just quote this from the 11th chapter, when King Prataparudra, he sees the devotees coming and performing kirtan. So he points out that he says, I'm very much astonished, for I have never seen such an effulgence. Indeed, their effulgence is like the brilliance of 1,000,000 suns. And nor have I ever heard the Lord's names chanted so melodiously. So Prabhupada, in the purport, he speaks about this, and he says that such are the symptoms of pure devotees when they are chanting. So all the pure devotees are as bright as sunshine, and their bodily luster is very effulgent. And you may have heard the story, Prabhupada tells it more than one time. I've heard it in his classes and in some conversations, that when he was flying from Los Angeles to Hawaii, there was a priest on the plane, and when he saw Prabhupada, he came to him and they were speaking, and he was pointing out that your followers, your disciples, I've met some of them, and they're so bright-faced. How is, he was also astonished, because generally people, we're materialistic people, they're not effulgent, they're rather the opposite. And the more they are in ignorance and engaged in sense gratification, they become darker and darker. So it's a phenomena, and Prabhupada said, yes, this is the result of the purification process. And if we think about it, so when he met this priest, the devotees the priest had met, how long had they been in Krishna consciousness? Maybe 1, 2, or 3 years, not more. So, which means and it's actually a fact, and Prabhupada confirmed it, that this process is so powerful that even after a short time, if we seriously practice Krishna consciousness, there's a whole change, even in the external experience of the person, and others can perceive it. Just as King Prataparuda saw the devotees like this, he was astonished. The priest was astonished to see Prabhupada's disciples, and we were astonished to see Prabhupada when he arrived. And it's not some imagination, it's a fact that those, when they become purified, then the spiritual quality of the soul will shine through even the material body, and it becomes effulgent. So that was a very incredible experience, which I still can see Prabhupada if I think about it. This image was just stayed there. It's almost 50 years ago.
Yeah, Prabhupada in New Mayapur had called the Sankirtan devotees from Europe in his room, and he was going to start a talk. And Prabhupada said, "Thank you very much for distributing my books so profusely." He said, "Are you reading them?" And Brigupati at the time, and other devotees, they were like leaders, say, "Well, Prabhupada, not so much because we don't have time." And Prabhupada looked so sad, so sad. That was an answer, say. He didn't say what is the good or something like that, but we could see, he was a bit disappointed. But that was the real truth of the matter, everybody was very, very much engaged. And this philosophy was not so easy to... one of the books I got in the beginning, some devotee gave me these teachings of Lord Chaitanya, I couldn't understand the first line, you're looking for one person, for one God, and suddenly you have all these names, I read it years after. But the Krishna book and the Bhagavad Gita was clear enough, and that God is a person, a soul. That was an important instruction, I think.
It was Prabhupada's stay in Paris at Fontaine-Rose Temple, 1972, was in the month of August, if I recall correctly. And I had gotten first initiation earlier in the year. Prabhupada had given me the name Gaura Chandra Das. And I remember seeing the letter, it was Gauracandra space Das. And I had, and another devotee, Prabhava Vigraha Das, had opened up tried to open a little temple in Marseille. We'd done a lot of traveling Sankirtan from there, a little bit. And the devotees from Paris had come down, and Bhagavan had just come over from United States to be GBC. And they thought since Prabhupada was there, it'd be a good time for me to get second initiation. So I went to, I was told to go at Prabhupada's room, which was on the second floor. It was a little room, beautifully decorated. They decorated very nicely with great wallpaper. And I went and gave my obeisances. And Prabhupada taught me how to count on my fingers and repeat after him. They'd give me a little piece of paper, and it was a little bit different than the way he's pronouncing it, but I decided to pronounce it just the way he said it. And then he threw the Brahmin thread on me. Now, as temple commander, I didn't go in any morning walks until one day Bhagavan said, "Gaurachandra, Prabhu, you get to go on a morning walk today." I was ecstatic. So we got into the temple van, which was a relatively new Volkswagen van that some devotee just was a college student in the United States, in New York, had joined in Paris, and he decided to take his savings, buy the devotees a van. And I sat behind Srila Prabhupada, who sat in the front passenger seat. We got to the park in Paris, and we got out, and as we were taking the morning walk, I thought I better stand just a little bit in front of Prabhupada to protect him in case of, anybody with bad vibes or, or he wants to attack, like I have a protective attitude. Prabhupada all of a sudden nudged me with his shoulder and indicated I should walk a little behind him. He's the guru, he'll protect me. When I realized that, I started walking a little bit back. He looked at me and he smiled. And then he started speaking. He said, you know, when you, I'm actually in my photograph, he said. You know, when you see me in my photo, I'm actually there. He says, another thing, though, is when you dream of me, I am actually there. And I said, Jai Prabhupada. And he said, and then he emphasized, he stopped for a moment and he looked at me again, continued to walk, and he said, no, when you dream of me, I am actually there. And I said, Jai Prabhupada, you know, with a little more emphasis as well. And he was happy. And as we walked a little bit, he said to me, he looked at the corner of his eye and he looked at me and he said, do you know what is sex? And I thought, oh my God, here I'm a brahmachari and Prabhupada's asking me if I know what sex is. And I said, well, obviously he wants to tell me from the Vedic point of view what it is. And I said, I'm going to say no. And I said, no, Prabhupada. And he smiled really big. And because he could tell what I was thinking, you know, that I was, you know, that he wanted to explain and I was trying to be receptive. And he said, sex is when a man and a woman exchange energy, not just on the physical level, but on the subtle level. It's not just physical, but it's on the subtle level. This exchange of subtle energy between the man and a woman attracts a third party who has a subtle body but needs a material body. Prabhupada looked at me and he said, there are many Brahmins and devotees and demigods who want to take birth in this movement. And then I was like, oh my God, I was Prabhupada, am I hearing what I think I'm hearing? Does Prabhupada want me to, you know, have sex, have children? And my face turned, I could feel it turning beet red. It was so hot, I thought it was on fire. Prabhupada looked at me with a smile like I've never seen before. His eyes, they looked greenish. He looked at this smile and he was content and he kept walking. I was trying to hide behind him because I could feel my face turning beet red. I'm sure all the devotees walking behind us were looking at me. And as we were walking along, Prabhupada said, let's go over here. But at that time, I looked at my watch and I said, Prabhupada, we have a lot of service to do back at the temple. And I said, I'm temple commander. I think we should go now. Prabhupada stopped and he looked at me and all the devotees. And he said, oh, this is the temple commander. We must do what he tells us. So we walked back to the van. Of course, later I realized we could have spent another half hour, an hour there getting the nectar. I didn't realize my faux pas. You know, Prabhupada he was just so merciful. He was just such a gentleman, kind-hearted. I realize now he might have been a little sarcastic. But I kick myself every time I think of that pastime of Prabhupada. I could have just kept my mouth shut, you know. But I was thinking, oh, I had to do my service, you know, and this and that. My service was to serve Srila Prabhupada, but directly. I was right there. Can't believe it. Anyway, what are you going to do?
He gave a talk on the lawn there where he took the picture, on the Madmana Bhavamnakto verse, and linking it with how to, you know, here in New Mayapur is, you know, very perfect place to learn how to love Krishna. You know, he mentioned, I transcribed the lecture, 83 times he mentioned loving Krishna. He don't speak about, you know, chanting your rounds or book distribution or you know, he just say, no, you have to love Krishna. There's no difficulty. 83 times. And then there was a few things there, you know, like the beautiful word from Prabhupada. He said, you know, like, we were sitting around him on the grass and he has these eyes closed, listening himself and us also, to the loudspeaker. He was chanting on the loudspeaker the Brahma Samhita. That was very beautiful. So anyway, all of European ISKCON was here, you know, waiting for Prabhupada to come to install Krishna Balaram. So everybody was there, sunny days, everybody happy, you know, our hero is here. And listening like that. And then the loudspeaker stopped, you know, and everybody just, you know, and Prabhupada was into Brahma Samhita, Krishna. And then Yogeshwar broke the silence and he said, "Sure, Prabhupada, you have the most wonderful voice of the whole universe." And Prabhupada stayed like that, and devotees cheered and Jai, Sure Prabhupada. Then Prabhupada opened his eyes and he said, "Yes, this is because his voice doesn't belong to this universe." And devotees, doubly cheered, Jai, Sure Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Then myself, I asked a question. I was thinking about how to stop mental speculation, thinking so many things, and that time my understanding was that not money speculation, but mental, because mental is not so clear. So I asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, how can I stop speculation? And Prabhupada just looked at me and said, "You must stop speculation." So I understood we just have to stop. That means at one point we have to just do it and just not think too much of it. We are sometimes too much mental about things, so just do it. That's all about us. So Prabhupada is making it very clear. Many answers like this I've heard from your work and other devotees. Yeah. So just have to, one day we have to just stop it, do it, do and die. Do and die, just do it.
Prabhupada, I met him before meeting him because I remember I went to England and I saw the devotees in the street and I was fascinated by the Maha Mantra, which I've heard on the radio singing by George Harrison, My Sweet Lord, and I purchased the book, Easy Journey to Other Planet, even though I didn't read any English, but I was fascinated by the picture on the cover, and then I memorized the name, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And so a few months later, I met a devotee in Paris, and for some reason, it was a woman. She asked me, "Do you know this man?" And she showed me Prabhupada, and I said, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I don't know why I memorized that. Then I started coming to the temple, and just about a year later, I was 16, I met Prabhupada, and it was in Geneva, Switzerland. And so I have seen him, heard him, and heard his glories before meeting him. So like when you see a rock and roll star, even though I don't want to make a comparison between Prabhupada and a rock and roll star, but still I was very much like in awe. When I saw Prabhupada enter the room, it was like so bright and almost floating. I'm not saying he was floating, but I had this impression that he was almost like floating. And a big smile. And then we offer some flowers, Guru Puja, and offer flowers. And I could catch his, in his eyes, a deep sense of compassion. Because we were very young, I was 16, and there was another boy also the same age. And the way he was looking at us, like, it's difficult to say, but it carried something. It meant great care. It meant like he was very concerned. And so the next day we were going on a morning walk in Geneva, and it was a little chilly in the morning, even though it was in the summer. And I didn't have anything except the kurta with the short sleeves. And I was walking behind Prabhupada and thinking, it's cold, but I am not this body. Then Prabhupada stopped and turned over to me and he said, "Oh, so you are cold." And I was so surprised that he knew my mind that I just didn't know what to answer. So, someone gave me a chadar and everything. And again, I felt this, like he cared. Because not only he knew, but he cared.
So I first saw Srila Prabhupada in 1975. I was already a devotee for 6 months, and Prabhupada came to Paris, and everyone was so expecting to see Srila Prabhupada because he was already our friend, and serving him in, madly serving him, and I was really much in love with Prabhupada, although it was like Rukmini in the Krishna book. She never saw Krishna, but already through the service and through the other devotees, it was great. So from the top floor of the building, I was 21, 75, and I threw flowers from the top floor, just to, it was like I was in the Krishna book, like the ladies of Mathura, and then I ran down the temple, the building, when Prabhupada, as soon as Prabhupada entered the temple room, most people start to cry. So did I, and well, it was so nourishing, and I thought, wow, this incense, it's really sticky to the throat, and no, but it was Prabhupada, a personality. It was his love. It was himself. He bring all India, all the holy dham with him. And then Aarti was going on, and I was like floating in waves of bliss.
But Prabhupada was very special. It was a special time when he came to America. It was after 1962. I related, or I thought about that. 1962 was they were going to be like a world war. You know, it was the Cuban missiles problem. You know. And Prabhupada came in 1965, everything was peaceful, and it was right in the correct moment. Otherwise, you know, if that happened, you know, Prabhupada could not have come. It was all planned by Bhaktisiddhanta, Bhaktivinoda, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know, there will be, and Bhaktivinoda says that there will be someday one person who come and spread Krishna consciousness, spread the truth, you know, the highest type of truth you can find in the world through Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga. And I was Srila Prabhupada. So he did it, and I remember my mother, she was, although we had two sons, she had two sons, only two sons in her family, they both became Vaishnav after living 5 years in America without giving any news except once every 6 months, something like that. And we left, you know, with big hair and beard, and we came back completely shaved and sick. Mother freaked out, you know, what's happening here. And she got used to it after a while, and she got to know, after the years, to know the devotees. And one day I gave him a Prabhupada Lilamrita, and she was reading, you know, so I gave her some of her small book because she could not get into big books and stuff like that. So she was reading the Prabhupada Lilamrita, and one time I came to see her and I say, I wrote your book, it is very nice, and I can see this man on the book, he is a saint. That's a real saint. He's different from the other. You know, he came, he was 70 years old. He got on that boat, he got stroke, heart attack, he didn't have any money. Who's doing this thing? You know, I'm 70 years old, I can't even move from my own place in Le Havre or, you know, Normandy, you know, I would not do anything. I want to be comfortable because I'm so afraid with the old lady. And he did that. He says, you know, nobody did that. I never see people doing those kind of things, except maybe in Christian history. We have so many saints in France. So we're always very thankful to Prabhupada, very, very, very much in our heart.
He had darshan of the deities, paid his obeisances, dandavat. Then he sat down on this famous Vyasasan, famous because there's a famous picture there. Prabhupada is just sitting like this. And Prabhupada started to sing Jaya Radha Madhava. And this was so powerful. Many devotees started to cry. And I felt that I belong to where this sound comes from, Vrindavan, which is very, very far. But I belong there. So, and I became very emotional. And then Srila Prabhupada gave a brief talk. I was at his right side, sitting quite in front, in the first or second row. And at that time, I was new devotee, and I was very impressed by Bhagavan's classes, Srimad Bhagavatam classes, very impressed. And I thought, wow, Prabhupada is speaking so simply. We are not this body. This human life is meant to realize Krishna for self-realization. And I thought, Bhagavan gives more elaborated classes. So Prabhupada, at that time, he looked at me in the eyes. He turned his face, wide open eyes, and very powerful in my eyes. And I looked in his eyes, and I felt so much power. Actually, I felt he has the power to reduce the whole universe to ashes. Lord Shiva's power. It was like the father warning his son, don't do like this, or don't think like this, you see? So that was so powerful.
So that was the first time I met Prabhupada. I drove him from Paris airport to the temple. And then devotees, they told Srila Prabhupada that I had been to India and before joining ISKCON, and I explained to Prabhupada that I associate with sadhu, Baba, Ram Shankar Das was his name, Yogi Raj from Ayodhya, Bole Chowni. I told all this to Prabhupada. He was a great tapasya, I have been with him, with this sadhu, and he could disappear and reappear. You know, he was very powerful. And all the other sadhus, I remember he did it, and the other sadhus, they said, like this. But then I told Prabhupada, and then I told him, and Prabhupada said, very good, very good. He said, when I said, he told me to chant Sitaram, this sadhu in India, and to worship Hanuman, and Prabhupada said, very good, in the car. And then I also said to Prabhupada, but these sadhus, they were smoking ganja, which is marijuana. They were smoking ganja. Oh, Prabhupada, this is not very good. This is not very good. He said like this, this is not very good. I remember he told me, this is not very good. Hare Krishna.
Said when he was asked, what should I think of when I chant? One of the early devotees, as I describe it in my book, is Shivananda. He was one of the earliest disciples. But in those, when he asked the question, he was 2 years in the movement, so he was a young devotee. So he was naturally asking, so Prabhupada, when I chant, what should I think of? Krishna's pastimes or something like that. You just hear, just hear the sound. So even that is not so easy, not to think of so many other things. So therefore, from my experience, we should try to find a place where we are not distracted. Because that's another problem. Sometimes devotees don't care so much about it. And then they chant. I always give the example, like in Madrid, the capital of Spain, there's some big shopping, everywhere else there's a big shopping street with so many different shops everywhere. So you can, of course, take a japa walk, just looking at all the shopping windows, and then stop at the phone shop, and then you chant a few rounds, just looking at all the different new phones and thinking, which one will I get next? So then this kind of japa is not, don't become distracted. Try to, now this time I will just focus on the holy name. And then if you do it properly and you avoid the offenses, then also there will be the result. Otherwise we can go on chanting not just for 50 years, but for 500 years, and the result will be very, very little. And don't be surprised. Sometimes people think, I'm chanting for such a long time, I don't feel, where's the ecstasy of the result? Well, how are you chanting? That's the question.
And he's asking Prabhupada, but Prabhupada, I read in the Srimad Bhagavatam that there is a planet, on this planet there are some eagles, they're so big, they feed on elephants. And Prabhupada turned to him, did like this on his stomach. Say, you are just coming out of the womb of your mother. What do you know? Poo, 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 poo. This answer and this thing with the ocean, you know, with the Indian Ocean. No, it's not Indian Ocean, it's Arabic. Otherwise, Krishna's powerful creation. He said, do you know why this big ocean, it could swallow Bombay just like that? Why it doesn't do it? Why, Prabhupada said, because Krishna says, my dear Arabic Ocean, you stop here.
In '76, I was already living for 6 months in Bhaktivedanta Manor. Srila Prabhupada came, and the day he came, actually it was a draft in the country. Everything was really dry and very hot and no rain. But as soon as Srila Prabhupada he came on the airport, rain like so much rain pouring down, and then someone explained to me, this is a Sankirtan movement. When you chant holy name, then all the rains and all auspiciousness come.
Later then we had his visit in 1974. So I was translating, that was my service, translating his books into German. So then when he was shown around the temple, he came to our room where we were working, translating. So, and he was explained that this is a translator's department, you know, and so he was asking, what are we working on? So as far as I remember, we were working on teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And we had received from the printer the galley proofs. So then Prabhupada, he said, he asked me, read. So I was reading in German, you know, and he was just standing there and listening, smiling. He didn't understand one word, but he really liked to hear, you know, one of his books in another language, and it was being prepared. So he really was very much happy to see that. And then later on, we can see how much Prabhupada was really interested in that his books would come out. 2 years later, another devotee, myself, we went to London to see him for some administrative question. We actually wanted to change the temple where he had visited, because it was outside the city and not many people were coming. So our idea was, let's go to nearer or inside the city, something like that. So then we entered his room to present this idea. But before we could even start to present it, first thing Prabhupada asked me was, so where are you now with the translation work? So I hadn't seen, well, I had seen him, but we didn't have any personal exchange for 2 years. But he was still remembering, and that was on his mind, you know. So at that time, then I was in the 3rd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, I could say that. But it was very clear that he was very anxious to see that his books are being translated and published in other languages.
Once I was reading Chaitanya Charitamrita that was just published. Prabhupada insisted that all the what he has translated should be published in a very short period, because the BBT was behind, and so they printed all these books. It was in '75, I think. So I was reading one by one all this Chaitanya Charitamrita, and in one of them, one of the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying that even if you think as a devotee that within this institution, meaning ISKCON, they are not very advanced devotees, you can still directly go to the spiritual master. I noted down, I read it again, and then I noted down, I don't have the exact passage, but I think it's in Madhya Lila, some place. And I was telling one of my godbrother about this, and Indian, and he didn't believe me. he said, no, how can it be? You know, how can Prabhupada say such a thing? That there's no, you know, advanced devotee. I said, Prabhupada didn't say there's no advanced devotees. He said, even if you think like this, and you have no association with the devotees, you can go directly associate with the spiritual master. So Prabhupada was there in his, you know, he was giving darshan every night. And so I asked the question, and Prabhupada confirmed everything, that actually, yes, that is true, you know. If that is the case, I don't remember exactly the words, but he made me understand that what is written in his books and what he's saying, that's the same thing. There's no like a contradiction between what he's saying and what is has written down. The instruction of the Guru in the books, they are transcendental vibration. Actually, Prabhupada was dictaphone, so that was actually words that he was speaking, and it's like we can hear those words, and they convince so many people after. Those who never met him personally, it entered into their heart. So the books, Prabhupada manifested through these books. He said also that I am always present in these books. But that's anecdote, because speaking about Bombay, that was a few years later. And if I go back to Switzerland, I remember we met once a gentleman in Switzerland, and we stay over in his house to sleep over. And he came to meet Prabhupada, and we were in a little room, just a few of us, and Prabhupada asked him, do you have any questions? And for some reason that man froze, he didn't have any questions. Prabhupada said, okay, bring the harmonium, and he started singing. I think it was Goranga Bolite Abe, I don't remember, unfortunately. And so he sang very nicely in some devotee company with the mridanga and the kartal. Then after the song, Prabhupada looked over at this gentleman and he said, you are a devotee. And I don't know why Prabhupada said that, because we never, you know, met the person, completely disappeared after. But he felt his heart. And we asked him after, why did you ask something to Prabhupada? And he said, I was so impressed by his presence, I just froze. I couldn't say anything. So I was not the only one to have this kind of reaction. Many people in front of Prabhupada, they just froze. It's like, you know, like, and the questions also that you could have in your mind disappear. So, you know, there's no doubts anymore. Everything becomes so clear. I also had that experience when Prabhupada was speaking to very people who had some name and fame. For example, still in Geneva, there was a Sanskrit scholar, and he wrote something on Krishna, and he met Srila Prabhupada there. You know, the devotee brought him to the little house in Geneva, and he said, one thing he said, oh, Swamiji, it took me 16 years to write this book about Krishna. Prabhupada looked it up, it's in French, but he looked it up and he says, yes, and you still made so many mistakes. and Prabhupada also in Paris, the same thing. His attitude will change completely when someone was not really favorable. He was in a mood of argumentation. Prabhupada will become, his attitude will change. He will become very, you know. But if he was with someone that he felt was favorable, he was very relaxed. And he had this incredible way of dealing with people, knowing their heart and answering their question without even speaking a word. Again, in the darshan, it was still in Bombay also, he was telling the story of Vrikasura. And even though we read it many times and heard it, when Prabhupada was telling it, he was like relishing it. he was like big smile, you know, like he says, "Is this foolish rascal?" He put his hand, you know, on his head, and the head exploded and everything. And Prabhupada was laughing, enjoying it, and it was just as surprising as to hear it for the first time, because for Prabhupada, this was really a new story. It was not like something we've heard so many times. Another moment also, still in Bombay, there was Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's, I think it was disappearance or appearance day, and Prabhupada sat on the floor and he put the picture of his Gurudev on the Vyasasan. And he gave a wonderful speech, and at the end he said that my Guru Maharaj saved me, and he started crying, and I was really impressed because he had so much dedication for his spiritual master. So often he said, my only qualification is to follow the order of my spiritual master. He said, I came here in the West on the order of my spiritual master. Many times he said, so many people came. This is by the preaching of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And sometimes when devotees will glorify him, say, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada will turn and say, yes, Jai Prabhupada. Because he will always remember his Gurudev. And that's one thing. It's been 40 years, more than 40 years since he disappeared, and somehow he captured our heart. It's still like, you know, it's still there. For some reason, I may not be a good disciple, but for some reason he captured my heart, and he's always present. Actually, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, the Vaishnav never dies. And when I go to Vrindavan and I go to Radha Damodar, his room, because he said he always lived there, or when I go to the Samadhi in Krishna Balaram Mandir, I really feel his presence. And I speak to him and I hear him speak to me. Maybe just my mind. But my mind has caught his voice. You know, I can hear him clearly say, and sometimes it makes so much sense. So one time, not such a long time ago, maybe 2 years ago, I was in front of the Samadhi in Krishna Balaram Mandir and praying to Prabhupada mentally, and almost lamenting, because I said, I wish I could meet Shuddha Bhakta, you know, like you. And I wish that could happen again. And I heard him speaking through my mind, and like again, you know, this is very personal, so it could be just my mind, but I heard him distinctly, and it's something that he will have said easily. I heard him say, you become that Shuddha Vaishnava. Because that was his ideal, you know, that you know, why are you looking for someone? You become ideal. He gave us everything so we can become pure Vaishnava, pure devotee of Krishna. And he was the perfect example of that. There was always Krishna in his mind, and there was always everything that he was doing was an instruction, even when he was joking, because he had a sense of humor also. And all the qualities of a human beings that we can think of, he had those qualities: humility and gentleness and wit and so many qualities we can think of. So my encounter with Srila Prabhupada was very changed my life, and still today I feel this connection. If I chant properly my Gayatri, my Guru Gayatri, then I can see him, I can feel his presence. And if I also absorbed in the Guru Puja, it's the same thing. And if I read his instructions on paper, and if I hear someone speaking about him, everything, he's there. I understand this idea the Christians have when they say that Jesus will send the Holy Spirit, that Jesus is present You know, even if 2 or 3 people are speaking about him, he's there right in front, in mid of them. So the guru principle is there. Prabhupada, he's a person. And Prabhupada also, the guru is a principle. And Prabhupada can manifest through other Vaishnavas. And that is the beauty of all of this. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a story of Avadut that meet with Yadu, and he tells him how he made 24 gurus in nature, the birds and a prostitute and so many elephants. I forgot the 24, but you know, there's a big enumeration, and he explains why. And of course, the guru can manifest in nature, but he certainly is manifesting in other Vaishnavas and sadhus, so those who have fixed sadhana. Prabhupada can manifest, speak through them, and enliven us, and hopefully he can speak through us.
And Prabhupada said, you know, you see the sun? Krishna says, I'm the light of the sun. You cannot see the sun. So what is the problem? Jai Prabhupada. There's like black cross lifted up and left, you know. Prabhupada said, you know, when you drink water, you never drink water? Yes. Krishna says, I'm this nice taste in the water, it's me. So, is there any difficulty to see Krishna? And everybody with the same voice, no, Srila Prabhupada. Then he gave a lecture. It's on record though. And after he asked for questions, then I lifted my hand also, I asked Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, when I am, you have to scream when it's like that. It's not like intimate, you know, you have 300 devotees, you know. And I say, when I die, I probably will not be a pure devotee, you know, when I take birth again. Is that you I meet? We are my spiritual master. Is that you I will meet? And Prabhupada was silent for a moment, looking down, and said, you don't have to worry, all the arrangements I've already made. Every day you are chanting, Janme, Janme, Prabhu say. Everybody was concerned, right? Everybody was concerned.
The next one was in 74. I went to Vrindavan to see the devotees, see Krishna consciousness, and see Prabhupada. I did not join yet. There was almost nobody there. Just, I remember Brahmananda, Jamuna were there. And I stayed there for like maybe 2 weeks. Prabhupada was there, very peaceful. It was a very peaceful time, transcendental. And I was given the task to take Srila Prabhupada remnants after his prasad. I was sitting on the outside veranda. Prabhupada was sitting outside on his string bed with Kinshana Das, Krishna Das, Babaji Maharaj. He was speaking, laughing together. I was there every day, eating Srila Prabhupada remnants and cleaning his plate and his shower bucket and everything like that. So, Prabhupada called me in, and he asked me what I'm doing. So he told me, you should finish your studies. I was in allopathic medicine. So he said, you should finish these studies and take care of the devotees. So he was concerned with practical matters in this way. And then during the class he gave, the class was about how the Bhaktivedantas gave mercy to the little Narada Muni as a little boy. And he explained that, during the rainy season, that's a sage service is to give mercy like that. And Narada Muni, just, humble service, eating the remnants, cleaning their food, listening to that. And he said, just like this young French boy. He got my mercy. So, I feel like, of course, we all got Srila Prabhupada's mercy in some other different ways. But, no, like many, of course, have no qualification to be a devotee. And as Prabhupada said, he created our pious activities, our qualifications. So for me, that was quite a concrete way to exemplify this fact that Srila Prabhupada, made us aspiring devotees by giving us his mercy.
We had invited some theology professors from the University of Frankfurt to see Prabhupada. So they came, professors, learned men, and Catholic theology, I think. So then Srila Prabhupada just began to preach to them about the very basic, the Aham Brahmasmi part, that you are not this body. There's spirit, soul, and this and that. So they listened for some time. And then at one point, one of the professors, he said, Swami, can we speak about some higher, spiritual principles like that? And then Prabhupada just said, so unless you understand the basics, what's the use of speaking of some higher spiritual? So he didn't care, to maybe cater to there and make a nice conversational impression. He would just tell them, and obviously you don't even understand what I have been explaining in the bodily concept of life, that there's a difference between the soul and the body, and you want to speak of some higher spiritual principles, which I think is an important instruction for all of us, for everybody. Sometimes devotees, they go or start to read certain things which are actually beyond their level of understanding. So you first do the basics. When you understand the basics, then you go to the next class. Not some student of mathematics who is already, or he just is learning that 2 and 2 is 4. Now he wants to understand algebra or some higher mathematics principles. No, you first do your studies of them. Then naturally you will come to the next level. So he was, and yeah, he was like that. He was could be quite strong on that,
Beginning in Paris, where inside Paris with Vilas, Lochanananda, he was actually the first temple was Lochanananda's apartment. And then the devotees got Fontenay-aux-Roses, and it was like in the suburbs of Paris, in the south of Paris. And Prabhupada was not so happy with that situation because it was not inside the town of Paris, in the center. So he asked the devotees to find a place in the center of Paris. And that's when Bhagavan came in with Indradumna Swami. Prabhupada asked them to come to help for the preaching in France. So they found that place. That was the center, but not only the center, it was like the very chic, aristocratic area, Avenue Foch, where there is Arc de Triomphe, going to the Bois de Boulogne, where all the kings were there, the Princess of Monaco, everyone. They were just neighbors, all the people around, they were aristocrats. So that was really a hot spot. That was first class. And Prabhupada came there in 73. That's when he installed Radha Parishishwar. I was not there, so maybe other devotees will tell you about this. And then 74 he came there in Paris, 75, 76. And then in 75, in 74 Prabhupada came here actually, and he checked out the property and made the first deposit with the commander, who was the owner there at that time in 74. But we already had the nice temple of Radha Parishishwar. Prabhupada installed Radha Parishishwar in Paris, right in the center. So now Prabhupada wanted a farm to be there, but he wanted a farm not too far away, like maybe 100 kilometers from Paris. This place is like 300 kilometers. So But you know, he came and gave the deposit, so he saw the place, and somehow it was fit for the devotees. He said the devotees will be very happy there. Then later on, the comment was that it's Prabhupada approved that it is far away, but it is very remote, and you just chant Hare Krishna and be happy, and that's nice. But there was a place already inside Paris, so it was like a teamwork, the city center and the farm center. And here he gave instruction, he wrote many places and commented when he was traveling after visiting New Mayapur around the world that I like very much New Mayapur, it's a remote place, very peaceful. Actually, Prabhupada was saying, we don't need a big castle. We can live under any tree. So he was showing, every evening he was sitting under any tree in New Mayapur and speaking and answering questions, teaching us. But we take those big castles for, you know, our guests. Sometimes they will not feel comfortable if we just live under a tree. So he was speaking like this in New Mayapur. You have all these famous Bhagavad Gita and exchanges. Prabhupada says, what is the difficulty? And here he said also, we just have to think of Krishna. Man mana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru. What is the difficulty? Here in Mayapur he said, now, in that year in 76, Prabhupada installed Krishna and Balaram. And he said, now that Krishna Balaram are installed, it's Vaikunta.
So you remember that time when Prabhupada was walking up the stairs and he was like very in pain, walking slowly. And devotees walking behind, and he turned, he said, don't think it will not happen to you. I'm realizing this, you know. You know, Prabhupada said that when we were young. He said, work now, samadhi later. Thank you, sir. Yeah.
There was one lady who was also a certain type of spiritual person or philosopher. And she was like this typical idea, Christian idea, if you believe in Jesus, then you're liberated no matter what, basically. That's the message she had. So then Prabhupada was pointing out that no, it matters what you are doing. You know, if you are acting in a proper way, then there will be some proper result. And if you're acting in an improper, sinful way, then how can you become liberated? And she was like insisting, no, everybody will become liberated. You know, so then Prabhupada, after she left, said, such a nonsense philosophy. He wouldn't, budge. You know, he would strongly point out that it doesn't make sense. You know.
And so after, again, I was in Calcutta the same year, and then devotees, especially Bhavananda Maharaj, he was a servant of Prabhupada, and then he told me, Ramdas, you can sit here, and at the entrance of Prabhupada's room in Calcutta temple, and then you see that no Indian guest come directly in the room of Srila Prabhupada without asking for a rendezvous or for, you know, because Prabhupada felt disturbed by people who came, say, oh, Swamiji, how are you? And then I sat down there and I chanted, and I was not supposed to go inside, and Prabhupada was inside, and he was taking prasad also. And then Bhavananda had gone to the kitchen to bring more chapatis, I think, and Prabhupada was alone in the room. And so suddenly I heard a bell, you know, Prabhupada had a bell to call for service. And then I heard a bell, and I said to myself, oh, what shall I do? He's alone in the room and he's ringing the bell. So my heart, immediately I went in the room. I offered my obeisances, and then Srila Prabhupada was sitting with his hand like this. He had kind of kitri, rice and dal, kitri on his fingers. And then he looked at me and he says, please carry me to the bathroom. And then I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And then I came behind him, and I helped him to stand up, and hand in hand like this, we walked to the bathroom, which was very near, a few meters. And then I let him, and then he cleaned his hand, and he wanted to pass water. So he went to the latrine, and then he turned back to me and he said, go back to the room and see that they don't take away my plate, because I haven't finished my prasad. So I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. I saw he was okay, he was good. And then I went back to the room, and then at that time Bhavananda, he came to the room, back from the kitchen. Oh, he told me, what are you doing in Prabhupada's room? I said, no, Maharaj, I've heard the bell, so I allowed myself to enter the room, and he asked me to help him to carry him to the bathroom. Oh, and then he said, okay, go back outside. I am Prabhupada's servant. I will take care of everything. But I had this great, this is a highlight of my life, you know. I have touched the body of Srila Prabhupada in my arms, and I walked for a few seconds, but this has changed my life completely, and this has saved me from this horrible material world, you know. Just this moment, for a few seconds, I was in another world. You know, really, just by touching Srila Prabhupada and walking with him, he took me to another world. And then I sat down outside, and wow. And then after some time I came back to Paris, and I worked with Hari Vilas for Spiritual Sky. And then I told the story to Hari Vilas, and Hari Vilas Prabhu, he looked at me and he said, Ramdas, you became a place of pilgrimage. He said like this, you became a place of pilgrimage. And then I said, oh, but this touch of Prabhupada is still today. Still, it is eternal, you see, it is eternal. See, the eternal, I had connection with eternity and with love of God, you see, it was incredible.
When Srila Prabhupada came here in 76 in order to install mainly Shri Krishna and Balaram, you know, all over Europe everybody came for the occasion. It was very beautiful weather, beautiful transcendental atmosphere. We received our transcendental hero, spiritual master and savior, and there was initiation the morning of the installation, and you know, hundreds of devotees were sitting on the grass down of Srila Prabhupada apartments there on the road, ready for the initiation to start, and Prabhupada was here at the windows. I was on the lawn, but he was there at the windows with the first New Mayapur temple president, Vishwambhara Prabhu, who told me that Prabhupada was looking at the devotees down there, and with tears in his eyes actually gliding, he said, when I see all these young boys and girls taking shelter in this new Mayapur, that makes me very, very happy. This is my victory. And he was emotional.
Morning walk. There is a park near the temple. There was a park with a lake. So we were about 10, 12 devotees, not very much. And there were 2 swans there in the lake. So while being with a little group with Srila Prabhupada, I was distracted and attracted to look at the swans. So I looked at the swans. And when I turned back to the devotees and Prabhupada, Prabhupada said something that, to correct me, I don't remember the exact words, but he said, even though we may be in the personal presence of the spiritual master, we may become distracted. So that was for me, but nobody, he did not embarrass me. It was said very gently, very kindly, and he did not put me into embarrassment. So the first day I was corrected by his strong look, and the next day so gently.
And of course, one thing Prabhupada said also, maybe quite significant, about Krishna Balaram in New Mayapur. A few months later in Hyderabad, 4 months, in November, after installing in August, he said in a conversation which is recorded that, of course, without spiritual strength, it's not possible to, progress and become self-realized. And he says the real strength comes from Balaram. And then he added, and therefore now in Europe, in New Mayapur, we have Balaram, we have Krishna Balaram. And all the devotees in Europe, they can take strength from this Balaram. So he made it, like like somehow now New Mayapur is a only existing temple which has been founded personally by Srila Prabhupada. And it could be like he gave this bona fide and clear instruction, or mercy, let's say, more than that, to all devotees in Europe, which is not easy, the old continent. We have our own difficulties. America has its own qualifications and little difficulties, but Europe is not easy to preach to, and especially France. And he brought Krishna and Balaram here, saying that all devotees for Europe, they can derive spiritual strength for themselves and for their preaching from Lord Balaram. So at least that was one reason why he installed Krishna Balaram in New Mayapur.
The most impressive thing I've seen on Prabhupada, I mean, this charismatic, person, strange in one sense, but very strong, very powerful, very attractive, and also through reading his book. But since I didn't have any intimate association, then I cannot say, well, he's very affectionate, very funny and everything. I say this is a master. The name master, is director. He's a general. He's a general on the army of Krishna, coming to serve the poor fallen soul of this world. And is very powerful. He has Krishna. He has Radha and Krishna behind him. He has this whole army. He's coming with the force of the spiritual world behind him.
Yeah, the outstanding quality that cannot change, but can only increase in Prabhupada is affection. But I wanted to add at that time I did not use that word, but love also. Love and affection. Love and affection is the outstanding, is like the root quality of all the various. Of course, me, I don't know anything. What can I know about Srila Prabhupada, his qualities and anything? I don't know anything. But somehow or other, by his mercy, we can taste a little bit of those qualities, and especially that love and affection towards anything. First, towards the Lord, like in Radha Parishishwar, Prabhupada commented that there is a famous photo where somehow the photograph took him. Prabhupada is looking at Krishna, Parishishwar, and Prabhupada commented after seeing the photo on paper that, Krishna is looking at me and I'm looking at Krishna. We understand that by extension that it means with intense love and affection. Krishna was looking at Prabhupada and Prabhupada looking at Krishna. And his love to all the devotees, so much love and affection.
As far as I can remember about Srila Prabhupada qualities that attracted me was his huge humility. When he came after the airport, after we greet him at the airport, he came to the Paris Temple. Paris Temple, yes, Rue-le-Sueur. And he had darshan with the Maltese. And there, the way I saw the way he paid his homages, his obeisances to the mortals. And I saw he was doing that with such, he was so humble. And although he was great himself, a great person, you know, celebrated, surrendered with devotees, you know, and still in front of Krishna, he was so small, so humble. And I like that very much. That impressed me very much.
The thing that attracted me to Prabhupada was his word, chant and be happy. You see, and I've been trying, but I have always been trying to be happy on the bodily platform, you see. So this is, no, Krishna said, no, this is not the happiness that I want you to get from Prabhupada. The happiness that I want you to get from Prabhupada is bhakti, yeah, pure love, pure love. Prabhupada was a pure lover of God, this is sure.
I remember also when he was walking and speaking on his new Yasasan, he was speaking about Krishna a lot. And because when he was saying out the word Krishna, you know, as we know, Namo Chintamani, Nitya Purna, Nitya, it's fully Krishna, the transcendental sound vibration of his name, spoken out by a devotee. It's fully Krishna, Purna. And I could like physically feel that, when he was speaking Krishna, because he had fully Krishna in his heart, through his full devotion for the Lord. When he was speaking out, the word Krishna, it was fully Krishna who was there. And although we were, I was so far away from being Krishna conscious, that, really gave me a lot of faith. It was like, wow, Krishna is here, really. Okay, the blue boy, the absolute truth is, Krishna and God, Supreme. That's it, yeah, I believe, I face. He's coming out of the mouth of Srila Prabhupada. He is coming out. That was a very strong thing. It really struck me. The sound vibration of Krishna's name coming out of Srila Prabhupada's heart and mouth made appear Krishna completely. That was very strong, very nice, very convincing, beautiful.
Out of the many qualities that Prabhupada has was this sense of compassion. I felt that he really cared about his disciples. He only went twice to Jagannath Puri when he was young, 20 years old, according to him. And when at the last stage, when his last project in Bhubaneswar, then he went to Jagannath Puri, and he refused to enter the temple because he said, "You're not allowing my disciple to come, so I'm not going to go." And I've never seen someone so dedicated and so compassionate because to teach Indians, even today, even young Indians today, they still hurt about the British rules, how the British treated them, with harshness and superiority, like you are just a bunch of savage, and we're going to teach you civilization. And Prabhupada has also gone through this kind of education in college and everything. And of course, he was following Gandhi when he was very young at first, but then he met his Guru, Gurudev, who told him it's not going to change anything. You make, the independence of India, and then it's still going to be chaos. And when there was a partition of India and Pakistan, Prabhupada was surprised, said, "Yes, my Guru Maharaj, he predicted this." So, but anyway, he had that great sense of compassion even to those who exploited India, and to those militias who came and acted very puffed up. And this is a very rare quality. Many of his god brothers didn't have this. They were I'm a Brahmana and I want to protect my purity and I don't want to get contaminated. And Prabhupada went to the West, all the way to America. And when when he heard that, yes, there's a possibility of touching some people, not among the upper middle class, but to the lower east side of New York, where all the bums and the derelicts and the hippies, he went. And he was living there, and he had all this hippies becoming his disciple. And I have known some of these early devotees who tell me how it was. It's incredible. They were saying that any hippie in those days that will come to his room any time of the day, Prabhupada will spend time to answer his questions. And it was Upendra, his servant, he was telling me that one time one crazy hippie came to Prabhupada and told him, "Oh, Swamiji, you know, I was walking down the street and then all of a sudden I realized I was Jesus Christ." So Prabhupada looked sternly at him and said, "Have you taken LSD?" He said, "Yes." He said to Prabhupada, said, "If you've taken LSD, this is all bogus." And then the hippies start crying, "No, no, no, I'm assuring you, I am Jesus Christ." And Prabhupada had to put up with all this madness, but he was so merciful, so patient, that he succeeded in transforming all these dirty hippies into some kinds of Vaishnava. Maybe not Shuddha Vaishnava, maybe not Vaishnava like he is, of course, but still to imbibe, because this is not obvious. We were raised in Jewish or Christian families, for most of us, and so to accept that God is a blue boy playing on the flute and attracting all the ladies, that is really far out. That is really something that is not in our culture. But Prabhupada did it, and every time he will start lecturing, he will sing Jaya Radha Madhava. And I've seen it many times in Mayapur, Paris. Prabhupada will sing. Practically everybody who have seen Prabhupada sing that song will know that he will go almost like he will go into some kind of a trance, singing like this. And I didn't know what it was then, but I'm very much aware that to him, because he said this song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur actually tells everything about Krishna. It tells about the Yamuna, it tells about Yashoda, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Baba. It tells about the Gopa, the Gopis, everything. All of Vrindavan is there in that little song. And it was a song that he will always sing before speaking. So his mood was Vrindavan. His mood was totally absorbed. And that's why when his last pastimes, he wanted to be in Vrindavan. And he wanted also to go through the entire parikrama of Govardhan. Devotees said, no, Prabhupada, the road is too bad, and he wanted to go on bullock cart. He told Lokanath Swami, I will go on a bullock cart. But for Prabhupada, he will be in Vrindavan, singing this song, and he will make us want to go there to Vrindavan, and we can realize our constitutional position very quickly if we want. So Prabhupada gave us that opportunity.
One of his outstanding qualities was his gravity. We do have pictures of Prabhupada laughing and smiling, but there's most of the pictures you can see him quite grave, right? Which is, it's like a little different from those, like the yogis, Mahesh Yogi or other yogis. They're always, with long hair and beard and giving a certain image of the saintly person who is smiling and in bliss, apparently, or whatever people should think. So Prabhupada, he was, you can see him, you know, how he was very grave, Gambhira, you know. So why or what does that mean? We can think in different ways. That on one hand, being, you know, having this position of leading a worldwide movement with so many devotees depending on oneself, that's definitely it's like a heavy burden, one might say, which makes you grave. You know, it's not just always smiling all the time, because and we know he had to deal with so many problems, and serious problems, trying to spread Krishna consciousness, or even thinking how to spread, like we have this nice picture where he is, my Lord, I just pray for your mercy to be able to convince them of your message. Or as he expressed in this poem when he arrived in America, you know, you realize, wow, how these people are completely under the influence of passion and ignorance. How will they ever be able to understand this message? So he was, even when he was writing his purpose, he was saying, he was meditating how to explain it in such a way so we would understand. So I think this gravity is one part, one reason is that. And also the fact that, you know, life it's a serious thing. And here we are struggling, you know, birth, death, old age and disease, and it's Kali Yuga. So there's not much reason to smile. People who are just smiling and thinking, oh, everything is nice, they're in ignorance, they're in illusion. If you really look at the reality, you become grave. It's a serious matter, and we should really think, how can I get out of this? It's not all just fun, you know. People think, oh, you know, have fun. Life is fun. Life is good. And Prabhupada were very much insisting on that, trying to make us understand this is very serious. Actually, many times he said, Krishna consciousness is not a plaything. It's not something, you know, you take lightly and, oh yeah, it's nice. Just chant and be happy and take prasadam. That's there, but actually it's a very serious thing. And he was like showing that in his own personality. So if you want to follow his footsteps, that's one part. Take things seriously.